The physical conditions there are atrocious. That's what's we live by the mark. We're there. Okay. So here, you use my phone. You can sit anywhere as long as you're close to the phone. And then you just move it around to go to some frames, kind of like that. If you want to get really fancy, you can set shots. So you could go to this one here, and then you can go this one. Where we live, you're there for we're going to stay right over here. The sun's behind us. I think we'll actually switch. Stand over here. This here. So you can sit there if you want.
Fantastic. Do you,
there you go.
nice. Does it matter to you if I'm seated, I'm at a slightly lower angle for like your...
Stay seated.
Yeah. No. It's more for like a lower angle is never as well.
Oh, for me?
Or like the...
I have one of those too. It's very uncomfortable to wear.
I know. You can't breathe.
This camera is the one that's...
Are you
Oh, okay.
So this doesn't have to be right in front of you. It can be right here.
Yeah, yeah.
And then...
Cool. Yeah, in general, you want to elevate angle.
Yeah, that's fine. There you go.
Oh, this is so fun.
Isn't that cool?
This one building, I know our building looks over into it, and like some of the units are like actually 2 levels, and like the concrete is like massive, like in between each unit. And you can see into like the units now.
That side.
Yeah, I worked right there, just walking everywhere. And driving wasn't like even realistic.
Good, how are you? Nice to see you, Poochie.
Yeah, like this is like a worst case scenario. One time we were going on probably a 12-minute drive. It took us 3 hours to get there. We literally took a pit stop for traditional 12-minute drive.
Yeah.
Where you were?
Now? Yeah, I mean, we're downtown Richmond, so it's...
Did you bring a chair, Mark?
Yeah?
You look like cozy and snuggly in your bed.
As long as I'm not freezing.
Well, you're gonna have the sun towards you, which hopefully it won't be too squinty or anything, but at least you'll get a little bit.
I'll take it. Exciting for you.
Thank you.
Celebrate more.
I know it's really such a hard time. We're trying to figure out summer plans, even to see my folks and maybe have a baby shower. It's just all so uncertain.
Yeah.
But we'll work it out.
We've done 2 baby showers on Zoom. It's like weird. Like you drive over and drop presents off, and they're like, oh, go home.
And because you know the part of the baby shower that's least exciting for people is usually the part where they open up all the presents.
Yeah, right.
It's more like the schmoozing and like seeing people and nosh and all.
Yeah.
So I know.
I guess I can put my feet on over my blanket.
Yeah, extra cozy.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Sorry it took a few minutes to get the technology going, but we are streaming from here, I think, for as long as my Wi-Fi hotspot holds up. It's really great to see people. I'll just leave it at that. Really great to see people. Well, I'm going to face that way because the sun is over. The sun works? Okay. Yeah, so the sun works. So, I don't know if you all know each other. I'm not sure you've even seen each other in person before, some of you all. So can we just go around our circle and introduce ourselves? And maybe if you've got an origin story, either if you're new to the synagogue or how long you've been at the synagogue. I know we have some new folks here too. That would be terrific. And we'll start. Keith, we're going to start with you.
Hi everybody, I'm Keith. I've been to synagogue
Keith.
9 years. More than 9 years. Can't answer these questions.
Okay, never mind.
8 years.
Who are you married to?
This is my wife Naomi. DOG. This is Mark. Okay.
Mark.
I'm Mark. I'm going to take this.
What did your wife tell you about the mask?
I promised my wife I'll wear it.
You know where?
Tell her I didn't.
You, Mark.
There's my bike over there. I'm right here. So I took her in the chair because this fits my bike. And I've been at temple since I came to Vancouver, actually. About 30-some years ago now, from Toronto. And the reason we joined Temple Shalom is because my wife went to high school with Rabbi Bregman.
I'm not Rabbi Bregman. I've been trying to fill his shoes.
This is how we picked the Temple Shalom.
People have picked for worse reasons.
You're still here.
Can I tell a Mark Elster story? So I don't think you know this, but when I joined the temple, they had a little welcome, to the new cantor, and that was 12 years ago, by the way. And at that same evening of welcoming me, there was a send-off to somebody amazing who had just given their heart and soul and whole life to the temple, a major loss for the temple. I didn't know who this person was. Right there. This guy was on his way to Ottawa, and I met you for the first time, and I heard about this amazing, amazing person. I was so sad you were leaving, and then like boom! I remember the party. I was at that party. Yeah.
He went to Toronto.
And then he turned around and came home. Thank God. And I was like,
Just wanted a party.
yay! The amazing guy came back, and now I
500 people
know
by
why.
a goodbye
At
party.
this rate, we're never going to finish.
Right, we're going to move it along a little
I
bit.
just wanted to
It's probably going to rain eventually.
All
We're
right.
so glad to get rid of me.
Emery.
Hello, everybody. My name is Emery, and this is my partner Zoe.
Are you last name Mark?
No, but I've heard of him.
Oh,
And I actually had lunch in his park in Yaletown not too long ago.
okay.
But we just moved back here from Toronto, and we were going to a synagogue called City Shul. It's right downtown, and our rabbi, just when we were talking about coming back here, basically recommended Temple Shalom. She did also say it's the only Reformed synagogue.
Right, so it wasn't much of a record.
Yeah, but I did hear good things. Especially as we were more public about it. Just people were saying, "Oh yeah, Rabbi Dan."
Okay.
So we were in contact a little bit before when we landed. A bit more we were talking. I think Kathy reached out, and the last few weeks we were back and forth, and it's I think everyone can agree that it's been a wild ride the last little bit. Okay. Sorry. It's been a wild ride, so I wasn't very communicative, and I think I was hoping Rabbi Brown was going to be around because we've been also back and forth on a few things. But just a few hours ago, we officially became members. So, sorry to steal so much shine. But Zoe, what did I miss? I don't know.
Just that I grew up in Richmond, going to Temple Shalom for bar and bat mitzvahs, not fully understanding the difference between what my family was a part of, which was Orthodox Judaism, and then Reform Judaism. And I were recently a part of a learning about Judaism program, and there I learned a lot about Reform Judaism, and I think that's really the place for me and for Emery. And I'm really space, and I'm happy to be here.
Great. Glad you're here. Let's keep going around, but let's also be conscious that it might rain.
Hi, I'm Jamie. This is my partner Zach. We have been just with Temple Shalom since last September, where we did the Jewish information class.
I am the brother of Zoe, and so the other part of the story is already true. I'm Carol, and I've been at Temple Shalom on and off since the late 80s. Some light break to go into Richmond when my boys were at school there, and then we're back. This is my son Ilan.
Yes, I am Ilan. Yes, we were at that Tikva for a little bit. That's where my brother and I had the bar mitzvah. But then we moved back to Temple Shalom and enjoyed it ever since.
Welcome back.
My wife won't let me say what I want to say.
Keep it short.
Go for it, Aubrey.
Oh, well, Temple, my name's Aubrey, or Jack, some people call me. Anyway, my worst nightmare was my kids moving to the States because one of them wanted to become a rabbi. I don't know why that happened.
What was worse, moving to the States or them wanting to become a rabbi? Don't answer.
It's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. And I'm Shirley, and we've been at the shul like 40 years. So we've been around.
Aunt and uncle.
Yes, sister over there.
Yeah.
Jeff Lowenstein, my wife Kathy beside me. We've been members for 18 years since we moved back from Toronto as well.
And I'm Kathy. I know most of you, and if I don't know you, I'd like to meet you, so maybe we can do that tonight. I work for Temple Shalom, but it doesn't feel like work because I love it so much. I'm the director of congregational engagement, so I'll probably come across most of you in my travels in the next few months. Hopefully we'll be back in the synagogue at some point, but I just wanted to say welcome, and it's really nice to be here with all of you.
Thanks, Kat.
Hi.
Marielle.
Hi, I'm Marielle. I also work for the synagogue, events and building maintenance, which there are not much of these days. so I'm doing Zooms, a lot of Zooms, amongst other things. But I'm also recently to Vancouver. I grew up on the East Coast, and my husband and I moved to Vancouver last July.
And Marielle's also a professional photographer who needs photos.
Mm-hmm.
And she's having a baby.
Thank you. Lots of stuff going on. I grew up in Delaware and lived in New York for 16 years.
I'm Ashley. I've been attending the temple since last fall with my daughter, and we became members in May.
Oh,
In
Ashley.
May? Yes.
I didn't recognize you. I apologize.
Hi, that's fine. I had darker hair.
Yeah,
The blonde, yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't have any.
My name's Chloe. I have been not attending for very long. I'm on a bit of a spiritual journey, I think, and I'm good friends with Ashley, and she invited me to come tonight. But I have been attending services online, which has been a really nice treat to have that resource available. And yeah, I grew up here. With my origin story.
Welcome.
My name's Anita, and I've been a member here for about 40 years or more. I could shop around because I came from Winnipeg, and
Same with all of us.
oh,
We'll have to discuss that.
and this was very easy to choose this synagogue. It was very, very welcoming. It was very comfortable. My children grew up at Temple Shalom, and my daughter is a member on her own with her family. My son doesn't live here. My husband, yeah.
I've been here since, well, it'll be 20 years, 2000, and I moved from back east, and we got married in 2004, and we just think it's a great show, and we're glad to have the rabbi and all the stuff that we do.
Thanks, Mom.
Want me to speak for you?
No, my name's Barry Silverman. My wife Joyce will do all the talking.
We're very boring, and we've been members for 20 years, and Barry thanks me every day for joining Temple Shalom. Coming coming up with the idea.
Terrific.
We're happy, yeah.
Thank you, guys. Well, welcome everybody. We're really glad that you're here. It's only our second in-person service. We did last week at the park with young families, and it looks like the sun's coming out, which is terrific. Ariel, you can sit now.
Okay.
Jessica and I, we're going to kind of our service because we're sitting on the ground and it could start to rain, but it's really, really nice to be with people. And we're streaming this for those that couldn't be here tonight also, so if you're sitting there, you're probably on the camera. And let's begin. Let's start with the let's try, it's not on your card, but let's try Shalom Aleichem as well, and then we'll light the Shabbos candles. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharim, Malachei Elyon, B'Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bohem Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Kadosh Baruch Hu, Barchuni leShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, B'Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Seitem leShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, B'Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When I was a rabbinical student, I spent a year as actually a year and a half as a hospital chaplain at a cancer hospital, cancer institute called City of Hope in Duarte, California. And there I was one of a bunch of clergy, and I learned from Father Dan. I was Rabbi Dan. I wasn't really a rabbi yet, but Father Dan, who was my mentor there, about bringing battery-operated candles into hospitals, because you certainly don't want to bring lit candles into hospitals in those pure oxygen environments. And so I had not pulled these out in a long time, and they were still in my kit, and they still worked. So I want to thank Father Dan for our Shabbos candles this evening. And there's batteries. They actually work. This one's lighting up better than the other one. We'll pretend. There it works. Sometimes it just needs a good. Yeah. So we'll yeah. Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. So I know you're all seated very comfortably, and I'm not going to force you to rise, so you don't have to if you don't want to, but we will at this point rise for the Baruch Hu as we welcome, as we enter into prayer. And we're going to face east, which is that. Be seated. And then there's a prayer for evening, a Ma'ariv Aravi, as we acknowledge that night is coming later and later, and these extended Summer nights are, as it was last night, they can be so beautiful. Tonight might be as well. We really can appreciate those extra long days as we think back to November and February when the nights get so early and it seems like we never see the sun. What a blessing it is to be in British Columbia this time of year. So we can read together in the Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidbaro ma'ariv adim chochma poteach she'arim u'bitbuna mishaneh itim u'machalif et hazmanim u'mesader et hakochavim v'mishroteihem barakia kirtzono borei yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or u'ma'avir yom u'mevi layla u'mabdil bein yom u'vein layla Adonai tzavaot shemo El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Ma'ariv Arayim.
Borei yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or.
The top of the middle of the card there, Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al ken Adonai Eloheinu V'shomreinu u'kumeinu Nasiach b'chukecha ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו ובהם נגע יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני Ohev Amo Yisrael Ohev Amo Yisrael.
When we think about the Shema, one of my teachers taught that we learned as children, maybe some of us, that Shema speaks about one God, and for sure it's a proclamation of monotheism and one faith, but I think perhaps a more complicated and maybe even a more mature view is that the Shema really speaks about the oneness of God, the God in all things. And maybe in the midst of this pandemic, one of the things that we've become most aware of is the humanness in all of us, the similarity, the connection that we have, that we all experience this virus in very much the same ways. We've experienced the social distancing and isolation in very much the same ways, the same pressures, the same challenges, and that's the oneness of God also. If all human beings are created in God's image, B'Tselem Elohim, then we experience things generally in the same way. And now, in the midst of our growing awareness about the systemic racism that exists in our society, and not just in the United States, but in Canada and around the world, we, I hope, are recognizing the oneness of that experience as well. Not that we've had the same experience as white Jews, but as human beings, that we can see that B'Tselem Elohim in each other as well. And that this Shema, this proclamation of faith, is not about there's only one God. It is that, of course, but it's about that we are all connected through that one God to each other. And therefore the Shema takes on a whole new level of meaning in the midst of a pandemic and the growing awareness about bias and racism in our society. It becomes, I think, a challenge to us to live our lives in, as it has always been from our tradition, in a fulfillment of this idea that God is in all things and we are all connected to each other. So maybe that's a frame for us as we close our eyes and we meditate on these words.
הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך היו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Nichamocha's on the left-hand side, the middle of the column.
Nichamocha ve'elim Adonai Nichamocha nehedor b'kodesh Nora tehilot osei feleh Nora tehilot osei feleh Malchutecha ra'u banecha Bokeh hayom lifnei Moshe u'Miriam Ze'elianu ve'amru Adonai imloch Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Hashivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha.
So I wonder if we could share a little bit about how we've experienced Shabbat during this period of social distancing. Because in some ways it's felt like an extended Shabbos, and in some ways it's felt like Shabbos never comes. If you've got 3 kids at home like I do, it feels like Shabbos never comes. But the ability to be home and to be with those that, hopefully, to be with those that we love and care about most, is at the core of what Shabbat was intended to be. You know, a time to disconnect from the rest of the world and to connect with those that are most important to us and also with our spiritual selves. So, how have you experienced Shabbat during a pandemic? Does anybody have any Shabbos stories? I know half the city's baking challah, whether you're Jewish or not. Everybody's baking challah.
Thank
calendar?
gosh
Yeah,
for Zoom.
I sort of been
You're being voluntold.
share. Yeah, it's been a really important. I guess I want to start with that. It's just coming back here. Our place was going over some renovations, so we were staying with Zoe's parents for I guess at the first 6 weeks, and you know our work hasn't started yet, so we're just like at home and really making up for a lot of missed time because we were on the other side of the country, right? And it was just last week we're back there to make Havdalah, and you know her father was just like, oh, he's just like, we really brought this, like we showed up and we really boom, like really made this back a part of the family again, right? Zach and Kami, they've been coming by periodically when they can, pretty regularly I'd say the last couple of weeks, and it's provided some order, it's provided some structure, it's provided something to look forward to. It's allowed for us to, oh yeah, for sure, we spend time talking about some of the small things throughout our days and our weeks. You know, I'm not sure if I'm truly capturing it, but it's been an important piece to get through all this stuff that's going on.
Thank you.
So,
anybody else? How many? Yeah.
Well, we've been mostly in parks. Lots of candles in parks, and that's the only place we've been able to see our kids.
Uh-huh.
So I look forward to Fridays very, very much. And now that the playgrounds are open, anywhere that's got a good playground is our next Shabbat spot. And yeah, but it's still a little bit sad.
Yeah. Anybody else? Kathy?
So fortunately or unfortunately, both of our daughters live in the States, one in LA, one in New York. But New York City was in such turmoil the last little while, we got our little Lanny back. So she's been with us all of June, and I'm sure she'll be here for July. And it's the first time in over a decade she's been here for more than 3 days. So it's been a blessing for us, particularly on Shabbat, to have her with us.
So nice. Anybody else? No?
Made a challah today that didn't come out.
You made a challah that didn't come out. It'll be French toast tomorrow.
I was going to say the same. I had some pretty bad challah experiences, and I've never been a challah maker. But my daughter now tells me that I make a better challah than Garden City.
Wow.
That's high praise.
There'll be a knock on your door.
I don't know if it's true.
If you would like your challah evaluated, I'm happy to test it. I'm told that before I arrived, Rabbi Bregman had a rule that if you brought a cookie into the synagogue or an oneg dessert, you had to bring it by the rabbi for tasting. That's
a great idea.
Anyhow, Mark.
Go ahead, Mel. The problem is finding the
I called Sarah. She can't come across the street right now. Lenore?
Laszlo?
Giza. Oh yeah, no, she couldn't come tonight.
Why aren't they here?
Sarah couldn't come across the street. I talked to Sarah already. Yeah, and Giza wasn't available.
Big day.
Let's sing Vashamru together. Bottom of the first page, left hand side. Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat dorot amerit olam beini uvein bnei Yisrael beini uvein bnei Yisrael beini uvein bnei Yisrael oti le'olam yam b'rim bambai Shabbat, Shabbat, Yom B'rim Bambai. Shabbat, Shabbat, Yom B'rim Bambai. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom.
Sheshet yamim
Asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz u'bayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash Yom B'rim Bambai. Shabbat, Shabbat, Yom B'rim Bambai.
Shabbat, Shabbat, Yambarambat. Shabbat, 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 Shalom.
If I can impose on you to stand up again. Crexing is allowed. You're allowed to complain as you stand. We'll face, there you go. We'll face again towards the east for the Amidah.
Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor VeHanora, Elyon, Gomer Hasadim Tovim Bekonei Hakol, Bezocher Chasdei Avot Ve'imachot, U'mevii Gola Le'unei B'neihem, למען שמו לאהבה, מלך עוזר משיח ומלך, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיים מצוותה רב הושיע, מוריד הטל, מחלל חיים וחסד, מחיי מתים ורחמים אבים, Somek lofim rofer holim, umatir asurim, umekayem unasot, mishenei afar, michamocha ol gevurot, umidol melech, melech memit umechayeh, umapsiach Yeshua, v'ne'emanotach hayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hametim.
Top of the middle of the face.
Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chayam yilukasah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
Take a moment for your own silent prayer, and when your prayer is concluded, you can be seated. You don't have to only look east. You can look around and up and take in the beauty of the sanctuary we're standing in. So I wanted to just not give a full sermon, but I wanted to take a minute to share a message with you. And I remember when I was a kid being told by my... You're heading out, Mark?
He's giving out his chair for me, but I don't need it.
Mark, come back and sit. Okay. The 80-something-year-old Holocaust survivor is going to sit in a box. Okay. Mark, sit in the chair. I remember when I was a kid, when my grandparents would come over and I couldn't be bothered to hug them. And my parents would push me at the door. Go hug your grandparents. Hug them hello, hug them goodbye. You know, and it was like the last thing in the world that I wanted to do. And I've been thinking about that a lot because the thing I want to do most right now is hug my parents. I mean, I'd love to hug my grandparents too, of a shalom, but my parents who live in California, and there's a border between us and a virus between them. And the longing that I have just to hug my parents, let alone friends and all of you, is it's a painful thing. And I don't think my experience is isolated or alone. I think that many of us are feeling that lack of physical connection. I'm right? Okay. I don't know if you saw the video about the woman in, I think she was in Ontario, who created, she called it the hug glove. Did you see that? I think it was Ontario. It was a plastic sheet that plastic sheet that she had put two sleeves in so she could hug her mom. And you know, there was a plastic sheet between. It was like a bad Orthodox wedding joke. No, it was more than the shower curtain. It was like the plastic sheet you use for drywall. Having done drywall, I know that. And it was just adorable, and it was painful at the same time. Sharon and I went to a congregant's home a couple of nights ago, maybe a week or so ago, to have drinks in the backyard and just to kibitz. And we didn't hug them hello. But when we left, we had such a lovely evening, we really wanted to hug them goodbye, and we couldn't. And so we decided, it was their suggestion, we hugged each other. So like I hugged my wife, and he hugged his wife, and it was kind of satisfying. It was like, you know, that's almost Chinese food. I mean, it was kind of something, but it wasn't there. That need for physical connection. So we're not the only ones that are thinking this way. I don't know if you saw the New York Times